Hi everyone, welcome to Storytime with Alex, reading Supernatural Night Terror by John Passarella. We're on the penultimate chapter, chapter 32. They've got a plan to try and work out where the Knocknitzer is by where they can see the lights have all gone out because she messes with the energy supply. And they try and get her really quickly because she's getting more powerful. There are zombies and wolves and all kinds of other horrendous things happening around Clayton Falls. So here we go, the penultimate chapter, chapter 32. Linda Dietz wasn't surprised when the lights went out. She'd heard reports of the strong storms and lightning causing outages. No reason to think her house would escape the inconvenience. She'd stocked up on batteries and candles earlier in the day, just in case. When the lights dimmed and then died, she took out a flashlight and spread lit candles around downstairs. What surprised her was that Trevor hadn't come down or complained when the power died. Either he was still sulking, or listening to his iPod, or maybe he'd fallen asleep and hadn't noticed. One less thing for her to deal with. She poured herself a glass of Piccini Chianti and sat down in her favourite living room chair to relax until power was restored. By the time she finished the glass and thought about having another, she heard banging from upstairs. She called out to Trevor, but received no reply. Within seconds, she began to worry. Deep-seated fears began to surface. As a single mum, she feared being a target for home invasion or worse. Setting her glass down softly on the coffee table, she hurried to the kitchen and picked up the telephone. When she heard only silence, no dial tone, her fears began to magnify. She grabbed her purse by the front door and took out her cell phone. For a brief moment she saw she had no signal bars, and then the display died. Her heart raced as she fought to suppress the panic rising inside her. Trevor was upstairs, but not answering her calls, possibly in danger from an intruder. Hurrying back to the kitchen, she looked around for a weapon and grabbed the first thing she saw, a cast-iron skillet. She climbed the stairs as quietly as she could, counting on surprise and her familiarity with the layout of our home to help overcome an intruder who was likely stronger and possibly better armed. Easing open Trevor's bedroom door, she almost gasped at what she saw by the moonlight streaming through his window. Somebody dressed in black, with his back to her, stood over her son in his chair, and Trevor was thrashing as if the person was pinning him down, hurting him, but unable to cry out for help. Anger taking over, she charged into the room, swinging the cast-iron skillet. "Leave my son alone!" she screamed. The base of the skillet connected with something softer than she anticipated, and the intruder screeched an inhuman sound as the blow struck him. The dark shape whirled around, and Linda felt weak-kneed at the flash of glowing red eyes she glimpsed before the intruder dissolved. Confused at what she had witnessed, and unable to comprehend how the intruder had simply disappeared, she rushed to her son and shook him, her fear transformed into worry. Groggy, Trevor slowly came to. "What happened?" he mumbled. "You're okay," she said, hugging him tightly. "You're okay now." Moments later, when the lights came back on, she saw 2 streaks of grey in his hair, one on each side of his forehead, running all the way to the nape of his neck. 3 zombies had shambled their way to CJ's diner. Dean and Sam put them down efficiently with 1 headshot each from close range. "Diner's no longer safe," Dean said, "if it ever was." Lights flashing, a police cruiser swung into the parking lot and stopped in front of them. Jeffrey stepped out from the driver's side. He had a state cop riding shotgun. Noticing the dead zombies in the parking lot, Jeffrey frowned. "Damn, they're spreading," he said. "You got info on Linda Dietz?" Dean asked. Jeffries nodded. "Her phone and electric were dead. Just got through. Says she chased an intruder out of her son's room." Dean exchanged a look with Sam. "She get a look?" "It was dark," Jeffries said. "Said he wore black. Red eyes? Goggles? She hit him with a skillet and he disappeared somehow. She was a bit hysterical, so—" "Disappeared sounds about right," Sam said. "If she moved on, maybe that ends the zombie manifestations." "Don't know," Dean said, striking the toe of his boot against white tunic zombie. "Still solid. Maybe they're not over until the current batch is all dead." Behind them, the diner's front door deadbolt turned. Lucy, Millie, and Joseph Weicherek came down the stairs. "I told everyone inside we had information for you," Lucy explained. "What now?" "That depends," Dean said, and turned to Jeffries. "Can you get us binoculars? Some spare two-way radios and access to the clock tower?" "Yes, to all three." "Good," Dean said. "Then here's the plan." Once Lucy explained that climbing a series of narrow switchback staircases was the only way to ascend the clock tower, Millie elected to remain at the diner. That left Joseph, Weicherek and Lucy in the role of spotters. With the state cop staying behind to temporarily guard the diner alone, the others drove to the municipal building. Once there, Jeffries gave Lucy and Weicherek a two-way radio, binoculars and a key to the clock tower entrance. After handing Dean and Sam's two-way radios, Jeffries rejoined his his temporary partner. Together they would defend the diner while Dean and Sam took positions to ambush the night hag. Dean glanced at the map, double-checking the warden's address. The radio Sam held squawked, Lucy's voice. "We're in position. 360 view. 6-7 fires burning. Some existing power outages, but not in... Whoa! Looking northeast, it's moving." Sam spoke into the radio. "What's moving?" She said it was getting stronger. "It's like a black veil moving over the houses. The lights, they're blotted out for a few moments as it moves over them. It's moving counterclockwise, like you said, circling northwest." "If it's moving," Dean said, "it's not feeding. Yet." "Good. We need to be in position," Sam said. Dean stared ahead as he drove north and felt himself zoning out as if he'd been driving for hours, hypnotized by endless miles of road. Probably lack of sleep causing loss of focus. He tried to shake himself out of it, but then he glimpsed her, in his rearview mirror, running diagonally across the street, Ben beside her. One of the rabid wolves stalked them, ready to pounce. Dean hit the brakes. "Lisa!" Dean cried as he swung the Impala around. "Here with Ben! They're in trouble, Sam!" Sam looked over his shoulder. "They're not real, Dean. They can't be. The real Lisa and Ben are safe at home. Safe. It's the night hag. She's using your fear against you." "How?" "I'm not asleep. When you're exhausted, your mind wanders. You're having a waking nightmare. She's stronger now. Maybe that's all she needs to find a way into your subconscious. Gotta help them, Sam. If I don't..." Sam grabbed his arm. "I saw something too, Dean. Yesterday. Something that wasn't real. It's all mind games. Your fears fuel her. If you give in now, she wins." "Damn!" Hitting the brakes again, Dean took a deep breath. He'd failed to protect Sophie, and he always worried that his being a hunter would bring danger to Lisa and Ben. Don't worry, because later on, he's just going to forget all about them. Anywho, with nightmares to prove it, now the night hag's psychic influence was jumbling his failure with his fears to mess with his mind. "You're right, it's not real. Lisa and Ben wouldn't be here. Can't believe I almost fell for it." Shaking his head, Dean resumed his original course and dropped Sam off near the warden's house with his iron short spear and lockpicks. Then he drove to the home of Phil Mayerson, CDC retiree, and parked half a block away. He didn't need Lucy's report over the radio to tell him when the night hag arrived and began to feed. Their house and half the streetlights on the block went dark all at once. "Going silent," Dean said into his radio before turning the volume off. Sooner or later the radio would lose power, but he couldn't know when. One ill-timed squawk from the speaker and he'd lose the element of surprise. He sprinted up the block and hurried around the house along a brick backyard patio to the rear door. Kneeling, he worked by sound and feel and had the lock picked within a minute. Once inside the house, he waited quietly for a couple minutes more, long enough for the Nognitzer to assume solid form and begin feeding, but not too long. For all he knew, Mayerson's subconscious was already creating an outbreak of bubonic plague in Clayton Falls. Iron short spear at the ready, Dean crept through the house. One moment, Jeffries was talking to Baumbach, his temporary state cop partner, who was still freaked out about what he'd seen in Clayton Falls, and the next moment he saw them wink into existence at the entrance to the parking lot over a thin bed of white mist. Even though DeYoung and Shaw warned them what type of living nightmare they might see next, Jeffries wasn't sure he would have fired so readily at seemingly ill people if he hadn't seen their eerie appearing out of thin air act himself. Baumbach stared in shocked dismay as Jeffries shot two of the hemorrhagic fever victims stumbling towards the diner. "What the hell?" he whispered. "They're not real people, Baumbach," Jeffries responded, but their disease is contagious. 7 more appeared at various points around the diner, lurching forward, begging for help as blood ran from their eyes, ears, noses and mouths, their voices choking on it as they moaned. "Help! Help us, please!" As they came close enough to shoot, 5 more appeared behind them. Soon they would be overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Jeffries took aim, but saw out of the corner of his eye that Baumbach was paralysed by dismay. "Baumbach, shoot!" he commanded urgently. The state cop nodded abruptly. "Oh, okay." They fired together, Baumbach clearing his left side of the entrance, Jeffries taking the right. Jeffries wondered what the people inside the diner thought about them mowing down apparent civilians in distress, but shook it off. A moment later, all the approaching bleeders, as he had begun to think of them to dissociate them from real human beings, disappeared. Even the ones on the ground vanished. He got on the radio. "DeYoung, sure. Is it over?" After a few moments, DeYoung answered, his voice bitter with disappointment. "No." Meyer said it's dead. Vitorek came on the channel. "The creature's on the move." By the time Dean reached Meyerson, sitting on a sofa by a table lamp with a crossword puzzle in his lap, the man was dead and the night hag was gone. When he examined the body, he discovered that Meyerson hadn't been reduced to a husk. He was wrinkled and old, but not withered to skin and bone. The strain of the feeding must have killed him, Dean thought. Either a heart attack or a stroke. He turned on the radio to report his findings and to warn Sam he was up next. The stairs creaked. Dean glanced up and saw an old woman in a long nightgown staring at him. "Who are you? Why are you in? What have you done to my husband?" she demanded as she took in the scene below her. "FBI," Dean said quickly, scrambling to produce his ID while keeping his iron short spear beside his leg out of view, before Mrs. Meyerson had a heart attack of her own. "I'm afraid your husband has passed." "No, no," she said, her eyes wet with brimming tears as she brushed by Dean and bent down to grab her husband's shoulders. "Phil! Phil! My God, no! Philip! Please, no!" She turned to Dean with an accusatory look. "What happened? Why are you here?" "My partner and I are investigating strange incidents in town," Dean said. I thought your husband could help. I had questions, but I think he had a heart attack." Dean guessed she heard only about half of what he'd blurted out. She sat beside her deceased husband and rested her head against his chest, crying silent tears. Good luck, Sam, Dean thought. Kill this damn thing already. When darkness blanketed the warden's house and extinguished nearby streetlights, Sam slipped around to the back door and picked the lock, allowing enough time for the night hag to settle in and begin feeding. Webb was younger than Meyerson, so she should have time to feed. If Sam acted too soon and the Knocknitzer fled, they would be back to square one, not knowing where she'd strike next, with dawn 2 hours away. This was it. All or nothing. Clayton Falls wouldn't last another night. It's the end of that chapter. We've only got one more chapter for them to sort all of this out. Join me to find out what happens next.